African spirituality. And again, join me and my sister friend here, Sister Ifa Modupwe, and we're going to talk some more about African spirituality. I would like for you all to share this show, share your comments, your feedback, information you want to share. If you have questions, share that too, y'all. We got to get it in during this time. We should be having great conversations. If times you want to study. I also want to thank a few people who reached out to me who said they really, really enjoy watching the videos. There's two sisters reached out to me. One asked me about being her godmother or something. I'm like, I'm the wrong person for that. But I'm gonna have to refer her to somebody else. Don't let this being on camera fool you, boo. This is not who. I don't do that. But anyhow, so yeah. And then one sister said she's been not only watching these, but she's also gone back on Facebook and watched all the interviews that I did as well. So wow. Thank y'all. This is great conversation. And so today, sis, how you doing before we get started? How you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm blessed. I can't complain. Yeah.
As people say, blessed and highly favored. I used to love to hear old people say that. I'm
blessed and highly favored. It sounds so sweet when they say it.
It do. You be like, that's where I'm trying to be at. So, sis, what I want to ask you about today, usually when people decide that they want to follow this tradition of Ifa, they talked about learning about what rules their head or their mother and father Orisha. What is that?
Those are your primary Orisha influences. And it could change too. Just as a side note.
No, please.
Usually one of the first readings you'll get information about which Orishas are your parents or are heavily influencing you. When you're initiated, that kind of more sets it in stone. But even still, I've seen people say, this was my Orisha at one time, and then the primary Orisha that influenced my Ori, and then as time passed, it changed for them. That's rare, but it still happens. And so I've heard a couple of conflicting things, but to be on the safe side, then I would say yes, the best place to get that information would be consulting Ifa.
So how do you do that?
Through divination, you get a Babalawo Ifa to read for you, consult Ifa on your behalf.
Right on.
I also want to encourage people when you're getting those types of readings, particularly things that have to do with your identity, that you may want to be present if at all possible. I know I have, there are priests that do work for me remotely, and then I do make an effort to connect with them face to face at least a couple of times a year, no matter how far away they are, because it's important to have that connection. Now, with all the technology that we have, sometimes, Awos will read for you on, WhatsApp or Skype or whatever, just so you can kind of feel present during the process. But especially those types of readings where you're trying to find out exactly who you are, what's influencing you, and piece together information about your destiny. Like, it is good for you to be in the room, present, if possible. If not, then, focused on the information that you're getting, because identity tends to be a real issue for us. As African Americans, we struggle with identity because the roots that we would have down in regard to ancestor, a lot of that information is lost to us. I mean, there's a lot of services now that give you information, specifics about your family tree, and then also general information about what your ethnic makeup is. But to really understand like who the people were, I know you could speak to that too, because you've done a lot of research on your family tree, and you know the people, you know what I mean? You know their stories, you know the context that you came into the world, because you've done your homework, you know, in relation to who your ancestors are.
Right on.
Some people don't have the luxury of doing that, and some people just don't have the information or access for whatever reason, adoption, foster care, whatever the case may be. So maybe you could talk about how that has impacted your spiritual journey.
Well, it's helped me to understand like a lot about me, like why I'm wired the way that I am, the way I see spirit, the way I do. You know what I mean? Sometimes it's really hard for me to follow like dogma. Like I always say it like that because sometimes I'll be places and people will be doing stuff and it makes no sense to me, and I don't do well with like just blindly following people. I think that's why I was never like really like, even when I was in Islam for a little bit, it just didn't, some of the shit didn't make sense. Some of the stuff felt like it was good and it made sense because it's kind of like instruction, but I just don't follow things and believe in certain things because you say we should believe in it. Like, you know, like a person had to come look like a white man for me to get salvation. That don't make sense to me because it X's me out. So it's kind of like, you mean I couldn't follow Marcus Garvey? Like, you know what I mean? Because he definitely was purpley black. So for me, is because I know my line, I know who my great-great-grandmother was, I know the tradition that she practiced. For me, it just helps me to be more rooted and more grounded. And I also think with spirituality, you're supposed to do work. I think far too often we rely on other people to give us things that we must really give ourselves. It's like paying attention, because even when things don't work out, then we be mad at other people. But if you was paying attention, you would have known that.
Yeah.
And so I feel like there is something about spirituality that's very different than religion to me. Religion is just something you put in the box and then we kind of follow. But spirituality means you have to be paying attention. You have to co-create. But that's just how I roll. Like, you know what I mean? In my own spiritual lineage, that's what that's what works for me. And I know I have a lot of strong woman and woman energy, and sometimes that don't work for other people because I don't think that man is the head, and I don't think women is the head. I think we're twin halves of the same whole, and so there's some things I can't. So I'm not into just bowing down to men because God made man. I don't believe in that bullshit. When I have to carry man, so that don't make no sense. But I do know that we need each other to get here. So for me, I'm always trying to strive to be one with that great spirit. Like I could say the great spirit because it just makes sense to me.
Yeah.
But it has to do with my own wiring. Does that make sense? And my own ancestry. When I'm saying wiring, I'm talking about my ancestors because that's kind of how I'm wired. So, and what I noticed is that, like when I asked you about the like knowing what your mother or father Orisha is, and you said those are your primary Orishas. Is it normally like you have to have a mother and a father, or do some people just have a mother? And I'm just asking these questions because,
Well, from my experience, one is more heavily influenced than the other, and it usually aligns with your gender. At least that's what I've been told. But sometimes, if Shango is in the mix, that's it. You know, you might have a female Orisha as an influence, but also Shango's probably going to be your primary influence. So it's interesting that a lot of what I think the reason why I love the tradition so much is because there were things that I knew about my lineage. Like I knew that my great-grandfather was a medicine man. I knew there were a lot of people in my family who, that's what they did. They cured people with herbs. I knew that he was a diviner of sorts. I knew that my great-grandmother had a lot of taboos. And they were just related to me as things that she don't do. You know what I mean? No, grandma didn't do that. She never did that. She never let the top of her head get wet. She never let, things like that. And so that was always in my mind. Like, how does this exist with this strict idea of fundamental Christianity that, you know, my family was kind of observing at the time, being in the Church of God in Christ. And to me, the two didn't go together. But for my grandmother, it was a match, because in her mind, she was like, nobody gets to tell me what to do at the end of the day. It's my relationship, right? My spiritual relationships are my spiritual relationships, and no one can direct traffic in that way except for me. And that takes a certain amount of just being aware of who you are, and like you said, paying attention, right? Mm-hmm. And then there's things that you know about yourself, like you know, if you're attracted to certain things, if you have certain skills naturally or talents naturally, you have an affinity for certain things, certain places or whatever, whether you've been there or not. And those things, so when you have divination that speaks to your identity, my experience was that it was more confirmation than new information.
Right on.
It wasn't a lot. And anytime I was in a situation where somebody was really trying to tell me who I was and it didn't align with who I actually was, then that was a red flag for me. Because, you know, I had experiences where I would have a dream about something just random, and then maybe be talking to another awo or devotee about something, and it would be the same subject matter would come up, and I would get some information about it as it pertained to me personally, or what I was up to, or who I was. And so these are the things that we got to understand our own significance. And I think this is challenging for African Americans. Like when we have conversations about African spirituality and we're talking about our own divinity, right? And these are just all the different orishas, all the different parts of the cosmology are exactly that. They are parts of a whole. You know, there's one God, or the Great Spirit, as you say, or Olodumare, right? These are all aspects, just as we are, you know, in a part of us, the greater part of us is also an aspect. How we behave in the earth and our physicality, we remember that everything, once it gets to a physical manifestation, is at its lowest vibration. So yeah, this is where all the foolishness and fuckery is going to take place. It's going to happen here.
Right on.
That's how we built this. You know what I mean? That's how it's set up. Right. But it's on our shoulders to reach for a different cause to give a different effect, right?
I know.
And so that's why this information is helpful. So when you know, like, how you're made up, these are your Orisha influences. They speak to your personality. They speak to your impulses, right? And if you know that you're influenced by Ogun and you have a really bad temper, then you know not to let nobody set you off. Right. Because, and it's your responsibility. That's the difference, right?
Right on.
So whereas someone else might be like, oh, the devil tried to trick me and all this stuff, that is not a sufficient response in a situation, you know what I mean? Because if you know who you are, right, then you know not to let yourself get in certain situations where there's stories of Ogun where he loses his temper and goes completely blind, like blacks out and kills people. Like if you know that you're influenced by that Orisha, that's a part of it. You know what I mean? So at the same time you get that information, most likely you're going to be told, don't lose your temper. But that's your directive. That's not the directive of the people around you, right? And nobody, all the people that you know are not sitting in a room somewhere and getting a reading and being told, don't set so and so off because they're a child of Ogun, and if they lose their temper, they might go blind and just start mayhem. Do you understand what I mean?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
it's a part. The significance of that is really about us being aware of who we are, about having control over yourself. It's about self-mastery. It's about this is your support for the fulfillment of your destiny. And it is a big deal to get that information. I've heard a lot of priests talk about the ways that you can get the wrong information and think that you're, because we are multifaceted beings. Like, we have a lot of Orisha influences. They may not be your primary influences, but you may still be influenced. Like, I had my very first reading, I was told I was a child of Ogun. But after initiation, I was told I was a child of Shango, and Ogun was my protector, which would mean that, yes, I was impacted and influenced by Ogun, but it's not my primary influence, right?
Right on.
So it's differences like that, and then what Orishas you will go to first. Let's say that you don't have the resources or access to get divination from another priest, and you want to a priest that you trust, because that's important. And you just want to give a adimu to some Orishas, right? Just as a part of just your daily rituals or regular rituals. And then you can go and do that. If you know who your primary influences are, your parent Orishas, that's a great place to start.
Right on.
It's a great place to start, because what you're doing is you're strengthening the vibration of that energy. Right.
So hold on, you got a couple of comments in the room. I want to make sure we get to your comments. So hold on, a couple of comments. Ava Jerry Scott says she recently listened to a webinar by Kola, this is like Ambiola, who said we are claimed by all Orishas. She also goes to say we cannot discard our Ori. Our Ori will guide us. Ori will guide us. LaDonna P says, she said, teach on that personal responsibility, Iya. We must respect our own divinity first. And then Sister Abba Jerry Scott said, how do we activate the energies of the Orisha within ourselves to grow our spiritual selves in a way to vibrate on a higher level? That is an awesome question.
Yeah, it is. That is awesome. Okay, so let me go back.
Okay, sorry. So I know you can't see the comments. So that's why I'm trying to
your primary Orisha is your Ori. That's your first divinity. Okay. So yeah, that is. So your connection to your own Ori, like we could say, your Ori is your personal Godhead, right? But just like any Orisha, you want to approach it with some deference and humility, right? And this, again, is governed by how we see ourselves, right? So, we know that for us, self-esteem is an issue. It may not display itself in every single way for every single person, but for us collectively as a community, self-esteem is an issue. We haven't been able to mobilize a lot of our combined power. The things that maybe we should be focused on as a spiritual community, things that we should be focused on as a community with the amount of economic power or buying power that we have, as much as we consume, as much money as we spend, we haven't really wrapped our mind around what it means for us to be a force in this society, in the country, in the world. And so this is important because it's an inside job.
Mm.
You know, a community of people who know who they are as a community is made up of individuals who understand who they are.
Mm.
So if I says we wake up one at a time, which proves to be a little problematic in some areas.
I can see
You
that.
know what I mean? But there is a such thing as critical mass. Like we can get to a point where we tip the scales in our favor, and then that becomes the default expectation is that, oh, you are expected to know who you are.
Mm.
And we don't allow each other to speak in ways that are self deprecating. We don't allow each other to refer to the community in certain kinds of ways because we understand what it is for us to be strong. We understand for us what it is for us to use the power of our word to reinforce that strength, right? So your Ori that's the place where you get that. That's your, if you could say, that's your physical and that's your spiritual reinforcement. That's the part of you that is strong no matter what, untouched no matter what, right? The question is, are you focused in that direction in order to build the strength of that connection to your conscious mind, right? Because if you think about it, your Ori exists within you, regardless of whether or not you acknowledge, right?
Right on.
Whether or not you are aware that you're divine, you still are. That's how you made, right? So in a sense, we had a class, one of the first classes that we had in LaDonna, remember, where there was like a bust, right? And the head, I think our godmother was trying to communicate the importance of Ori. So there was a head with a hat that had 2 levels on it. And so at the top, we'll call that your superconscious mind, right? So your Godhead, that's your Ori, the part of you that is the divine spark of Olodumare, or the creator, the great spirit, right? Then there's the front of your forehead, which is like your conscious mind, right? This is what you know, this is what you believe, this is what you're focused on.
Right on.
This is your conscious thought traffic. And then in between is this area where you should be connecting those two, right?
Right.
And for us as African Americans, a lot of times it's like a pack of wild dogs is running through there. Like we're almost afraid of our own power in a lot of ways. And so that is where the parent orishas come in, you know, to help you to get in there, like to make that connection, because you have access to all that information. You have access to all that intelligence. You have access, and that is inherently you. And yes, all of Olodumare the spark that you are created from exists there. So that is all of the Orishas. Even the ones that you don't know and never recall, never seen the shrine, don't even know their names. You know, all of that is there. The intelligence that runs the entire universe is there within you. Right. And so I think that it serves us to take time, and maybe this is the time for that. Like this time that we're in isolation, that we have downtime. We don't have to worry about a lot of expectations. Even if we're working remotely, I've worked remotely, so I know that the expectation a lot of time for communication is not the same. And you have some freedom. Plus, you don't have the stress of eating outside your home, using other bathrooms, all this other stuff. You're at home, right? Take some time for yourself and contemplate like how you're made. Contemplate your own divinity. Contemplate like okay, if I really am like a microcosm of the macrocosm of the universe, like that's all inside me. What does that mean?
Mm.
What do I now have responsibility for? I have responsibility for myself, but I also have a responsibility for what I put out,
Right
you
on.
know, and how it impacts. And I have to know that that carries weight. And women, our tongue is very powerful. So we can be, if we're consciously aware of what we're putting out into the world in
Right
terms of
on.
what we're saying. I know I watched a video that you made a couple of days ago about how we talk to children.
Mm-hmm.
And I hope you got that situation resolved.
Well, I'm
Because
working
you
on
was
it.
upset.
I'm working on it.
Because
Woo! I'm
you was
working on it.
not happy. But I felt you so strongly because, like, I'll damn near lose a friend over a kid.
Me
You
too.
know what I
Me
mean?
too.
That I really feel like part of the challenge that we have is because we don't start early enough.
Right on.
Usually people are on their second life already before they trying to remake an adult into something. By the time they even have an idea of personal responsibility in terms of African spirituality or
Right
who
on.
they are, ancestry, or any of those things, if children have this information, then it shapes the way that they see the world as they grow.
Right
And it's
on.
also a place because there are orishas and it's all a part of the whole, it shapes the way you process information, right?
Right on.
So we talk about how our kids learn differently or whatever, but inherent in our DNA is some of this information and some of this intelligence, right?
Right
That
on.
makes us want to take a thing and make it a part of a whole, right?
Right on.
We always the first one to invite somebody into our family and all this, and we see it on different levels throughout our community, but that's a way of becoming more intelligent and being in the world based on what you know rather than just memorizing information.
Right on. You got a couple more comments. Sis Miss Anita Walker said, "Is there a special prayer for your Ori?" Ia Mamba said, "Some people change heads. If you sit on the mat and Orula says your crown is Oya, that is what it is. A lot of people will try to change your crown and you end up being confused. You cannot change your own crown." She goes on to say, "Meaning your mother and father in Orisha keeps you balanced in everything that you do." LaDonna says, "Copulate how you're made. If I am a microcosm, a replica of the universe, what does that mean? What's a meditation for real?" Right on,
So,
sis.
yeah. A meditation would be, and I can post some more information in the comments. But a meditation to start would be to get a white candle and a mirror, turn off all the lights, and contemplate the idea of how you're made while looking at yourself by that one light.
Wow.
And it's an environment that allows your ancestors to move you. It's an environment that allows you to connect to the energy that you are, more fully inside and begin to really see that what's inside of you is also outside of you, and that it's only it's a decision to make the connection. There's, it's really just to set the intention is the most important part of it. Anything else that needs to be done will fall into place. You'll be prompted. Trust me. There's something else you need to do. it will come to you because it'll be different for different people. But yeah, it's a contemplation that you're meditating on, just the contemplation of how you're made, and in that space you can do that. Thank you, Ia, for your comment. I really appreciate that. That is true. A lot of confusion around Orisha heads. A lot of confusion because there are some. I've experienced people who only acknowledge certain Orishas. You know, they don't want to deal with. I don't know if it's because they don't want to deal with it. I don't know if it's a lack of divination skill. I don't know what it is. I personally don't do those readings, so I don't know what they're experiencing. But they will. I have seen people who everybody who sits down in front of them is a child of one Orisha, or so like they got two parents, and it's probably their parents, and they're like, "Yeah, you just like me, I'm such. But that's not necessarily, you know. I don't know.
Yeah, just like me.
That to me, I don't know.
That's crazy.
A lot of us, we come from different places, different spaces. We can't all be the same all the time. That's not possible. So, yeah.
So, sis, as we start to wind down, tell us about your book recommendation, which is Finding Soul on the Path to Orisha.
That wasn't my recommendation. That was the recommendation from the other day.
Oh, okay. So I just shared it. So
I never read that book. The books that I sent you, I used to own. Okay. So I don't have them anymore. But
so what's your book for today? Well, I just shared it because maybe somebody needed it from last week, so I just shared it.
Yeah, I think it looked, when I read the description of it, it seemed good. It's very hard to find Orisha books written by African people. Harder to find Orisha books written by African American people. Yeah.
So who writing these books then?
Than they have ever been. You know what I mean?
Who writing these books?
Like
this guy right here, John Mason?
Yeah, that's a good one.
But that's not written by us, though, is it?
And I also like the Orisha that he has, the Book of Songs. It's a great book of songs.
Okay, I think I may have that here, too.
The Book of Songs, yeah.
So I got this one, too. I got books galore.
Yep, that's the one.
Okay, I got these.
That's the one.
Is he us though? I mean, is he African or African American or Caribbean American?
I think he's
Cuban,
African American or Caribbean.
Oh, okay. Yeah. All right, that's good. I didn't know. And then what about this one? We can talk about that tomorrow.
That's a great book of recipes for Orisha Ademus. Yeah, I love that book. Okay. There are some documents that you can find inscribed. It is difficult to sift through a lot of the books. I know Falakun Fatumbe, who was, I think, married to Louisa Tish. He's a white man, American, who wrote a bunch of books. And they used to be the only books that you could get.
Wow.
Because they're the only ones really in wide print. There was a book that came and went as quickly as it came, was Ifa Keys to His Understanding, which was authored by Fashina Falade. And I don't think it's in print anymore. And I only seen a copy on Amazon that was like $800.
What?
But that's one of the most comprehensive books that I've ever seen.
Okay.
And I've actually seen a copy of it, but it wasn't my copy, so I don't have access to it anymore. But if I could get that book, I would be very happy because it's a great book of information and references for rituals and all types of stuff. So that's a great one. Did we cover everything?
Yeah. So what? I just need one book recommendation so I can share it. That's why I'm.
Okay. There's a book called The Way of the Orisha.
The Way? Hold on.
I think I sent you the link.
Okay. Oh, I have that book. Okay, it's upstairs in my shrine room, but I do have that book. It's kind of worn though. My God, It's I've had it for years. It's worn.
Yeah.
Ooh,
Yeah. Yeah.
girl, yeah, it's really woe out.
Mm-hmm. And I'll look to some more to see if I can find um, some more introductory books that are
Okay.
written by us. I like to support Black authors anyway.
Right on.
Um, and I know that there are some books out there. A lot of people choose to self publish, and sometimes their books are a little bit more difficult to find. But I think most people should be selling their books on Amazon. So
Right on.
those books in particular, I'm sure you can find pretty easily.
So tomorrow, can we look at some of the songs and prayers for Orishas and um, why we have songs and prayers for Orisha?
Mm-hmm.
I think that would kind of explain a lot for people. Because one of the things I do here, even when I'm working with young people, and even if they're Christians, this is really interesting. They'll be asking me stuff like, "What's the purpose of prayer?" And I think that that's a really good question. So I never, it's like, wow, sometimes we think because people see us do stuff that they understand it. But I think it's a wise person to ask the question when they don't understand something. There's nothing worse than you doing something and you have no reason, you have no idea why you're doing it.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of like being an American sometimes. We just follow everybody start running, we all start running. And then we be like, why are we running again? But in the moment, you just start running because everybody's running.
It's not our finest hour, but we are known for doing that.
Yeah. Albert Jerry Scott said, and Adonis said they love John Mason's books. And then she also gave another book, Black Gods. I think I have that book. Albert Jerry Scott.
Which one?
Black Gods, Orisha Studying the New World. I have so many books. It's ridiculous because when I travel, I buy books.
You buy all the
I
stuff.
buy books and be like, I'm gonna bring that back. I'm gonna bring that back. I just feel like that's a part of who I am. I don't get to read all of them, but I reference them.
I'm the person with all the books. I don't have my books anymore.
I'll make a
I lost
list.
them in a move, so a lot of stuff I don't have access to anymore like that. But I do have some like electronic files that I've downloaded from Scribe of different books. So I'll go back through there, and I know I have John Mason's books are in there.
I think I would like to also know more about how do we bring these with us to the new world. Like, and let me explain why I say that, and then we're going to get off here because I have to prepare for another live. But I feel like sometimes you'll see us doing stuff, and we don't even know where that came from. We just do it because our grandmama did it. But we don't even know that they were really preserving. That's why we don't do church like other people do church.
Right.
We be in there doing stuff, and it's like, I went to the white church, and they just sing and praise the Lord. Then they get up and leave. We be in there cutting the rug. You know what I mean? Like, and I always want to know why we do that differently. Like, what is it about us that it comes through differently?
Yes.
But tomorrow we'll talk about prayers and songs, and I'm looking forward to that. And I'll tell y'all this, and I know how you feel about this, but this is Zoom, so I could add other people onto Zoom.
I think that's a good idea.
Yeah, so if anybody want to come on with us tomorrow at 11, let me know so I can get you hooked up. So, because we could have like 4 or 5 people on here easily.
LaDonna knows all the songs. I'm busting you out, LaDonna.
Oh, LaDonna, you hear that? Because she on here too. LaDonna said, peace, Sarita. I haven't seen you in a while. Peace, sis. She said, feel free to share your ebooks in the Mantis Moon Temple Facebook group. Right on. Thank you, sis.
Okay.
And maybe tomorrow, I don't know, maybe you could come on and sing with us. And tell us what some of these songs mean. I personally, this is my honest God truth, when I go to church, because I get invited to a lot of stuff. When I go to church with people, that's the best part I like. I ain't gonna front. It's the music. I'll be in there like, and I may not even, it's just something that's, you know what I mean? Or even when I go, one time I went to somebody burial, it was a Muslim, black Muslim, of course. And when the Muslim sister sang that call to prayer, she sounded like Patti LaBelle. I'm not kidding. It did not feel like the Arab, like, it didn't know. My sister
It was
was
different,
riffing
huh?
and yeah, and I was like, nah, that.
You felt the ancestors. That's what it
I was like, look
was.
here. You know what I mean? So is there something about learning the songs, or even when you're in times when you're contemplating or trying to get yourself straight, there is some, that's why I love to hear old people hum. There is
Yeah,
something about the humming that makes
yeah.
you feel like we're gonna get through this, we're gonna be all right. It is adds something.
Yeah.
And I think that
It's activating something inside of you. It's like soul stirring.
right.
It's like, you know what I mean? It's a way, I think, for me, it's a way that we call our ancestors. It's a way that, and you feel them coming in. You just
Me
feel the
too.
energy. You feel the room filling up. You feel that. It washes over you. I could say as a singer, like, it's a totally different experience. I love choirs so much that
Mm.
I sang at a church for a long time because it's the harmony of those voices together
Mm-hmm.
when it just comes together and it's man, there's nothing like that. And
It's so
so you
powerful.
feel that a lot of times, like if you're at a bembe and everybody's dancing and they're doing the same thing and they're singing together and then they bring in the harmonies when it starts getting good to them. It is a transcendent experience. There's nothing like that.
Look, when I was in Haiti and I went to that voodoo ceremony and they started singing, it just felt like the room was spinning. But not, I didn't feel dizzy. I was swaying with them. And next, you know, I was
Right.
in the formation with them singing. I
Yeah.
don't, you know, I'm not
You
Haitian.
you
You know what I mean?
forgot.
But it was just like there was something so powerful about, like I felt like I knew what the song was saying. Like there is something so powerful in those songs and those rhythms and the way we do it together. It is just so powerful. It's
Well,
just so powerful.
I
So
want to say this right before we close.
okay.
So, um, Ifa is also the voice. You know, it's the voice of the creator. So there is a mystery to sound vibration.
Mm.
You know what I mean? And some people just have it naturally. Like if you've met somebody who has perfect pitch and
Mm.
they are also like spiritually in tune, they will naturally have that. They'll be able to go directly to that chord that moves with what you're trying to communicate, right?
Mm-hmm.
But there's even, this is an oral tradition, like we can't get away from that. There's the chanting of Odu, which I don't do very well, but there's a chanting of Odu, which is because I don't speak Yoruba, but that is a kind of like, it's very musical, it's rhythmic. And there are some odus that if you chant them, they take you in a trance. There are some odus
Mm.
that you got to do certain things before you even chant them, because you know that energy that you calling in is going to be, one thing about this tradition, everything eats. We'll get back to that.
Right on.
And so you bring in that, you can feel it, how vibration just moves the whole frequency of everything and just raises it, and sound. And if we use our voices in that way, like we have to be more aware of the weight that the power of our word carries. We have to be more aware of it. Because just in that awareness and just taking care of what we say and how we say things, tone, inflection, all those things, because it also amplifies that power. So that when you need to speak to something that's life or death, when you need to speak to something that makes all the difference in the world for you or your family, like you haven't dissipated that power on foolishness.
Mm. That's real talk, sis.
That's an important thing. So yeah, that's in that prayer and the songs is a part of that. Well, we're gonna talk about that tomorrow.
Yes, we
I love
are.
you.
Yes, we
And I
are.
love you. Thank you, everyone who joined us today. Thank you for your comments. Thank you for sharing information with us. And definitely let Sister Rolanda know if y'all want to get in on this conversation tomorrow.
Yes.
Because I don't
Singing
know
and
all
prayers.
the songs.
And y'all, this is a place for us to fellowship and to talk about what we know and what we love about this beautiful tradition. And this is like the time like no other where we need to be discussing it and reaching across these airwaves and filling it up with what we know to be true. So I'll see y'all tomorrow. Peace and blessings, family.
All right, peace.